Well, we're going to continue with our series in 1 Samuel. We're in 1 Samuel chapter 25. Last Wednesday night, I actually taught through the entire passage, verse by verse. Wanted to focus in today mainly on one verse, okay? And I know somebody here just heard that and was like, yes, I'm getting out of here early today. Right. No. Here it is, 1 Samuel chapter 25, verse 1. Now Samuel died, and all Israel assembled and mourned for him, and they buried him in his house at Ramah. Stop. That's our text for today. Yeah, wow. Really? That's where we're going to stop? Yeah, we've been studying for months now the book of 1 Samuel. Originally, there was not 1st and 2nd Samuel. In the Hebrew Bible, it's just the book of Samuel. Same thing with Kings and Chronicles. But in our Bibles, it's divided into part 1 and part 2. So 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel. A lot of times when you ask people who wrote the book of Samuel, the instant answer is, well, Samuel wrote it. It's named after him. But please note, we're in chapter 25, verse 1, and what happened? He died. All right, so I don't think he wrote the rest of 1 Samuel, and I definitely know he didn't write all of 2 Samuel. We're not sure who the author is. A lot of people think maybe Samuel started it, and then another author came along and finished it. My personal opinion is that it was probably Nathan, the prophet, who wrote this, and that's a very popular belief. But it's one of those things where for months now, we have seen the story of Samuel's life weaved in and out of this book. It starts in the first couple of chapters focusing on him. How his mother was barren, could not have children, but she would go year after year to the tabernacle at the time of the feast, and she would pray that God would give her a child. One particular time, she prayed and she said, Lord, if you will give me a child, I will give him to you. And the Lord opened her womb. She had Samuel. And when he was old enough to be weaned away from her, she took him to the tabernacle, gave him to the high priest to walk with the Lord and serve him. Now think about this. And at the point in time that Samuel was given over, whose decision was it? It was his mother's to fulfill that pledge. But at some point in time, Samuel was old enough where he would need to make the choice himself. Do I fulfill that vow that my mother gave? And do I serve the Lord because I want to serve the Lord? Or do I do it something else with my life? Do I go my own way? Which one is it? It was a point in time where he had to decide for himself. That's how it is for everyone. A lot of times when we're doing baptisms at our church, we baptize people that might have been Christians their entire life. But they come to me and they say, look, I was baptized as an infant. In the church that I grew up in, that's the way we did it. But I never made the decision myself. And when you've put it in terms of this is the first act of obedience for us when we become disciples of Christ, I said, I'm going to choose myself to get baptized now. I think that's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. We just logically can look at this and know that some point, we don't know when, Samuel himself had to make these decisions himself, how he would live his life. And what an incredible life it is. He leads as a prophet, a priest, and a judge over Israel. And for the small part of time in the history of Israel that he led, there was peace and prosperity, which is one of the reasons why we don't have a lot about his story. Just as in the news cycle, the Bible tends to talk more about the tragedies and things that go wrong than all of the peaceful times. Very little commentary on that kind of stuff. Samuel led in an incredible way, but he was also there for the reign of King Saul and was just, influential in participating in the anointing of King David. Incredible man. And we start chapter 25 with just those words. Samuel died. He died. All of Israel assembled together to mourn for him. That might seem odd to you, and you might think, like, really? All of Israel? Does it really mean that? It's probably hyperbolic language. It doesn't mean every infant child and grandmother could get there. But the idea is the entire nation was mourning, not unlike several years ago when Billy Graham passed away. The gentleman who was not only a great evangelist, but was considered America's pastor. And you looked at it, and all of a sudden, a lot of walls between groups broke down, and in a moment, people were able to come together and say, that man had an impact on this country and around the world, and he will be greatly missed. The question always comes with something like that, and who's going to take his place? Who's going to take his place? As chapter 25 goes on, I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's a long chapter. But in a nutshell, this chapter has two deaths. As the story goes on, we find that King David has his 600 men with him. They are in the wilderness, but while they are hiding from King Saul, they come across a man who is first described as very wealthy. He has hundreds of sheep and 100 goats. And for a season, while the shepherds and shearers are out doing the work, David and his men, it says, sort of surround them like a wall, protecting them. While they were there, the owner of this place, this sheep ranch, I don't know what you call it, sheep ranch, goat ranch, he's a goat herder. He has incredible, not just prosperity, but safety. David and his men are a blessing. What is the man's name? Nabal. Nabal, the Calebite, first described as being very wealthy. But that's the only maybe positive thing we learn about him. Because we learn that he is very surly. The word there, maybe the way my wife would say it, curmudgeon-y. I would say it, he's the grit in the bottom of your coffee cup, right? That's his personality. 2 times in this chapter, the man is called worthless. Worthless. Biblical words, not my words. And you look at that, and that's something we see in both Ruth and throughout Samuel. People being divided into 2 categories. People of honor and valor, noble of character, and people that are worthless. Worthless. No matter what, they're against God and they're against people. And the Bible describes some people that way. He is described that way. Worthless. Nabal, the Calebite. What does it mean that he was a Calebite? Joshua and Caleb, out of the 12 spies that we read about in the Torah during the Exodus, 2 gave good reports, and they had faith in God that he would do what he said he would do. And those 2 were Joshua and Caleb. Because Caleb trusted the Lord, his clan was given land, choice land, and they were known as a very honorable people. Fast forward a few hundred years later, and here we have Nabal, who's not honorable. He's a Calebite. And there's a little bit of a play on words happening because the word Caleb actually means mad dog. So he should be honorable like his ancestor. Instead, he's not a man of honor or valor. He is worthless like a mad dog. And to top it off, his parents named him Nabal. What does that mean? In Hebrew, Nabal is the word for fool. What were those parents thinking, right? What were they thinking? The guy's name is literally Fool. And that's who he is. Rather than honoring King, or not king yet, but David, who will be king, he is completely disrespectful to David. He will not bless him. And because of that, David's anger rises and he becomes vengeful and filled with wrath. And he says, all you men, strap on swords. I'm taking 400 of you with me. And we are going to kill Nabal and everybody that lives on that goat ranch, right? He is angry. And what happens is he doesn't commit slaughter and murder because of Nabal's wife, Abigail. She's described as a woman who is beautiful and discerning. And she comes, she deflates the situation, honors David. David realizes that this woman is the one who just stopped him from committing murder. When Nabal hears about it, what happens to Nabal? It says basically describes he has a heart attack. His heart dies in him. He's paralyzed for 3 days, and then the Lord strikes him dead. Whoa. So in chapter 25, we have the death of two people. Two people. What did they have in common? They both were born. What did they have in common? They both died. But that's about it. They were two entirely different types of men. One, a man of honor, of valor. One, a man who's worthless. One, a man who has given his life to seek after God and to serve him. And the other, who is wealthy. And he spent his life simply going after what the world had to offer. When we read the Bible is full of stories just like that. Full of people that are considered worthless and fools, and full of others who literally give their entire life, not going after what the world offers, but going after God and his promises. I want to jump for a little bit today into Hebrews chapter 11 and read some parts of this because it kind of shows us a summary of several different people that are highlighted in Scripture all throughout the Old Testament and says these people all have this one thing in common. One thing. This is what we read in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. For by it, the people of old received their commendation. By faith, we understand that the universe was created by the word of God, so that what is seen was not made out of things that are visible. By faith, Abel offered to God a more acceptable sacrifice than Cain, through which he was commended as righteous, God commending him by accepting his gifts. And through his faith, though he died, he still speaks. By faith, Enoch was taken up so that he should not see death. And he was not found because God had taken him. Now, before he was taken, he was commended as having pleased God. And without faith, it is impossible to please God. For whoever would draw near to God must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who seek him. By faith, Noah, being warned by God concerning events as yet unseen, in reverent fear constructed an ark for the saving of his household. By this he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness that comes by faith. What did all these people have in common? They had faith in God. I grew up in church. I grew up hearing the word faith in two places. One in church, the other on George Michael videos, all right? But it's one of those things, in general, it's kind of a churchy word, kind of a religious word, and even in our culture today, it's shoved over by people that say, well, I have facts, you just have faith. One, I would challenge that with people, because most of the time people say they have facts, they don't have facts. What they have is faith in somebody telling them it's a fact, but that person doesn't actually know it's a fact. Take the creation of the world, like this passage starts out. Nobody was there. Nobody was there. It's all theories, all of it. So you look at that, and what happens is you might say, well, I don't believe God created. I believe there was a bang. Why? Because my high school teacher said that. Well, why do they believe that? Because they had a professor say that in college. Well, why do they believe that? Because a professor told that professor, and so on and so on and so on, until you find somebody who was never there that came up with an idea, and they try to look at evidence, but so many times when we think it's causation, it's just correlation, or it's not connected in any way, shape, or form. We all have faith. For me personally, every time I process faith, Lord, I'm putting my faith in you, I use a word that's more common. You hear me pray it every Sunday. Lord, I trust you. I trust you. For me, that makes it more impactful in my life. In fact, one of my screens on my phone just says, trust me. And when I'm struggling, I make that the screen I see every time I open my phone. And for me, it's a reminder. It's like the Lord speaking to me, trust me. I'm like, okay, Lord, I trust you. I'm not simply saying religious words, I have faith. No, Lord, with this today, I trust you. I believe you with what you said, and I take you at your word. Here's this list of all these people that trusted God with what he said, trusted the character of God. And that verse 6, without faith, it is impossible to please God. To please God. I want to please God. I know a lot of you here want to please the Lord. Some of you, you're new to faith, and you're asking those questions. How do I please God? What do I need to do? Do this, do that, do the other thing. Some of you grew up in churches that put a big emphasis on pleasing God. If you want to please God, here's all the things you do. You go to church every Sunday. If you really want to please him, you go to Sunday school. If you really want to please him, you also go to Wednesday nights and a small group. You want to please God? You need to give money. You really want to please him? Make sure that people see you do it, and make sure they can see how many zeros are behind that one, right? You really want to please him? Go on a mission trip. You really want to please him? Don't do all of these things. Don't drink, don't chew, don't date girls that do, right? That's the way we view it. We view it, and so often are taught this, that that's how you please God. But that's not what the writers of Hebrews just said. Without faith, it's impossible to please him. So you can be doing all the right things, not doing all the wrong things, but if you're not doing it out of faith, believing what God said, believing what he says about his character, and trusting him, it doesn't please him at all. Do you take God at his word? That when Christ hung on the cross and he said the words, "It is finished," that the blood price for your sin was paid. You are saved if you trust him at his word. Incredible. It goes on with this. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place that he was to receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going. By faith, he went to live in the land of promise, as in a foreign land, living in tents with Isaac and Jacob, heirs with him to the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. By faith, Sarah herself received power to conceive, even when she was past the age, since she considered him faithful who had promised. Therefore, from one man, and him as good as dead, were born descendants as many as the stars of heaven, and as many as the innumerable grains of sand by the seashore. These all died in faith, not having received the things promised, but having seen them and greeted them from afar, and having acknowledged that they were strangers and exiles on earth. For people who speak thus make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. If they had been thinking of that land from which they had gone out, they would have had the opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better country, that is, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared for them a city. Love this. It goes deeper and says these people had such faith, trust, belief in God that their goals weren't here on earth. They're looking forward to another city, another kingdom with a different king. And even though they died not seeing that kingdom come, they still had enough vision to believe. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. The story of Abraham and Sarah, there's so many things here, and how he went out and he went to the land of Canaan, how God put him on a mountaintop and said, look around, everything you can see in every direction, I'm giving this to your descendants. Even though you are old, your wife is old, you can't have children, I'm going to give you children. I'm going to give you a promised son, and I'm going to give you other sons, and they will be like the stars in the sky and the sand on a seashore. Put it into context, stars in the sky. Not stars in the sky like when we look up in Canby and we have the city glow from Portland and we can see a few. No, the stars in the sky when you are in the middle of nowhere and it's just infinite stars. Sand, not sand in the sandbox. Sand on the seashore. And the Lord fulfilled that promise, not just with the Jewish people, but all the people that make up the Arab countries in the world. Millions upon millions upon millions people God provided. There is something interesting in this passage, though, because between verses 8 and 9, there's a time gap. We can't see it here, but if you go back to Genesis, you see it. Why is that important? God called Abraham out of the area of Babylon. It's called Ur of the Chaldeans. And he said, Abraham, leave everything, go to the place I will show you. And what did he do? He went. He went. Like I said several weeks ago, that's amazing. We would be like, okay, Lord, give me the address. I need to plan my trip, put it in GPS. For some of you, it'd be like, I have a Tesla, got to figure out where the power stations are, right? Let me know what I need for the journey and what I need for when I get there. Lord, give me, the best route, the timing of it. We would want all this information. God did not do that at all. He said, go, and I will show you. He trusted the Lord by just stepping out. He didn't know where. He didn't know when. He only knew how. Through God. And so he simply just gets on the trade route and he starts walking up through the Fertile Crescent, coming up and over. And after 600 miles, he gets to Paran and stops. Did God tell him to stop? No. And he stayed there for 20 years. For 20 years. God tells him to leave. By faith, he trusts God. But for some reason, after he got 600 miles, he decides to stop in this city. The journey got hard. Here's a good place to stop. I'm staying here. 20 years later, God tells him, Abraham, go to the place I will show you. And then once again, he leaves all of the stuff he acquired in Paran behind, and he goes, and that's when he travels another 400 miles and gets to the place God had originally sent him to. And that's incredible. In this, do we see that at all? No. Why? Because God didn't hold that against him. And that's important. Some of you here today at one point in your life heard the call of God in your heart. Might have been at a camp, in a church service, while you're taking the garbage cans out, I don't know. But you heard it, you knew it, and you started a walk of faith, serving him, not yourself, not the world. But then life happened. You got a career. You started a family. You decided you wanted to become the best downhill skier in the state. News for you, you're not. Whatever it was, career, family, hobby, something else, you're like Abraham in Paran. But know this, it's never too late to shift gears and step back out into that call you had. Do it. It's never too late. And where are your eyes? Focused here on this world and what you can get here, or there? The city and the kingdom that God has promised. Where's your focus? It's never too late. I'm going to skip forward down to verse 32. Down to verse 32. The writer of Hebrews in chapter 11 goes on and on from there, and he tells even more about Abraham. He explains the whole story of Abraham and Isaac, and Isaac going up to be a sacrifice, but God providing the true sacrifice and a goat, and that Isaac is not sacrificed. Just a piece of information there. We so often think Isaac was a child. Most likely he was in his 30s. Most likely he was in his 30s. Incredible story, and it foreshadows the gospel of Jesus Christ, the true Isaac, who also had to carry the wood that was the implement of the sacrifice on his own back up to the same hill thousands of years later, but he was the true lamb to be slain. Incredible. From there, it goes on with a long story of everything that happened with Moses and other stuff. But verse 32, it says this, "And what more shall I say? For time would fail me to tell of Gideon, of Barak, of Samson, Jephthah, of David, and Samuel, and the prophets." Love it. Here we have Samuel mentioned again in the Bible, who through faith conquered kingdoms, enforced justice, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword. They were made strong out of weakness, became mighty in war, put foreign armies to flight, Women received back their dead by resurrection. But some were tortured, refusing to accept release so that they might rise again to a better life. This entire story is just packed full of all these people over thousands of years who did incredible things for God. And all of it that they did was by faith. They trusted God. They believed his character and that he fulfills his promises. Now, I think this is important in two ways. There's two ways I'm really looking at this today. One is for the person who has never put their faith in God. And when you hear me say that, most of you think instantly, Tim's talking to the new person at church. The new person who hasn't been here before and has never accepted Christ. Well, that's one type of person in that category, but I'm also talking to you. The person here who comes week after week, helps, and you say, I have faith in God, but functionally, you are still trusting in your own goodness and your own works. To the person who goes to bed at night wondering, am I good enough to enter the kingdom of heaven? Today, trust the Lord. That it's his sacrifice on the cross that paid the blood price for you. The words, it is finished, means the price is done. And by his death on a cross, we have forgiveness of sin. You have forgiveness for your past. Everything that's happened before this moment can be forgiven. And by his resurrection, we now know that the promise of new life is for us through the Holy Spirit. Incredible. For others, you might be here and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, but who am I? Who am I? I'm not a great preacher. I don't have prophetic words. I can't sing great. You might be thinking, I'm too old for this. I'm past my prime. Abraham was past his prime, well past his prime, right? Moses was 80 when he began the journey of God's call to release the Israelites. You're never too old to get in and serve the Lord with the goal of his kingdom in mind. And you're never too simple to be used by him. Remember I said that there were two men that died in 1 Samuel 25. Two men that died. As I explained, David was going to kill Nabal. He was stopped by Abigail, and it was the Lord that instead took Nabal. Abigail, Nabal's wife. Beautiful and discerning, but even more, the Lord did something. When she went and stopped David's anger, this is what it says. 1 Samuel 25, verses 23 and 24. When Abigail saw David, she hurried and got down from the donkey and fell before David on her face and bowed to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, "On me alone, my Lord, be the guilt. Please let your servant speak in your ears and hear the words of your servant." And she brings gifts to David and calms him down. And after Nabal dies, what does David do? He marries Abigail. Incredible story. But have you ever caught what she said and what she did? Who sinned against David? Nabal. Nabal was the fool. She's discerning. She comes before David, and her words, "On me alone, my Lord, be the guilt." She's the innocent, saying, "Take the guilt of the sinner and put it on me." This story, a simple woman, foreshadows the gospel of Jesus Christ, what he did on the cross. The Son of God, totally innocent, perfect, having never sinned, taking the payment for all of us Nabals.